pin him to the chair.
I know. I feel like that guy you see on TikTok now where he's like, made 50 bags this week. And you know there's no one else in the room with him.
Right.
So shall I intro or are you intro?
Yeah, you can intro, mate, if you want.
I can't remember whose turn it is.
I can't either.
No, I think it's your turn. I
turn.
did the DC one. Which
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's you.
Yeah, if you're scared, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm joking. That's fine. Cool. We're all ready to rock?
Yeah, it's all going.
Okay. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Renewables podcast. So we're back again in 2025 for another episode, so thanks very much for coming back. Firstly, before I welcome our very special guest today, I will firstly go over to Mark. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Yep, same as always, living the dream in the world of renewables. We actually had a contract win before I came over, so I'm in especially good spirits. Good. I'm looking forward to this chat. It's always nice to speak with other installers beyond my usual network, and it's the first time I've met Ben.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think last week I'd just got a contract win before our chat, didn't I? So it's nice that we're both getting them. We're both getting them. It's been quite a busy start to 2025 for all three of us, I think. So that's really good. But yeah, without further ado, we've got Ben from Evo Renewables. How are you doing, Ben?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, good. Well, thanks very much for coming.
Thank you.
Where have you come from today?
Only Northwich, so near Warrington, Chester sort of way.
Yeah.
So not a million miles away, really, is it?
For some reason, I thought you were down south somewhere, but more local than what I thought.
Yeah.
Well, that's very good.
Yeah.
And we're gonna have a bit of a installer group therapy session, I think, aren't we? Because there's nothing as tradespeople like more than having a good moan. But also, I'm going to try and take up the mantle of trying to steer us in a positive direction as well. Because I think there's a lot to celebrate in our little niche of the industry. We all do certain things outside of renewables as well, and we'll come on to that. But renewables is making up, I think, most of our work in there. So I want to try and steer that in a positive way, but we have to have a good moan as well. This is therapy. I found this like therapy.
I'll get the tissues ready. We'll all be in tears in 10 minutes.
Oh, we've had wins this week. It's all good. But so I think what's really good is everyone enters the electrical industry, the plumbing and heating industry, the renewables industry in different times and in different ways. So do you want to give us, because we don't know your story, and kind of everyone listening or watching on YouTube, kind of a bit of an idea as to how did you get into like the electrical side and the renewable side as well?
Mine's quite a weird story.
That's good.
So I was having dinner with the Queen, Prince Philip, and Ken Dodd, and and the next day I didn't turn up for work, so I got sacked. So I was like, right, what am I going to do? And I decided to go back to transport refrigeration. That's where, when I left school, that's what I got into. And then one day a friend of mine said, do you want to come and help us with these solar panel things? Dead easy to do. And this was like maybe 13 years ago. So I was like, yeah, okay, let's go and have a look. Went down, I was like, that's all that's involved? It's like, yeah, and we're getting paid per job. So I got into it that way. And then sort of kind of realised I was okay at it. And then it was around the time of do you remember Ploughcroft with Deborah Meaden and the on Dragon's Den?
Yes.
So we were doing a lot of subcontracting for the subcontractors who subcontracted to them.
Right.
And we were getting like pennies for installing these panels. And some of their lads came down and like, oh yeah, we get about 500 quid a day. 500 quid a job. We're not even getting sort of half of that.
Mm.
So we wrote to all these companies, and before long we were just installing for every man and his dog that was a solar panel company.
Wow.
And never really looked back since, really.
That's amazing. But I've got to go back to the whole the Queen.
You read my mind.
We need to go back to that.
You can't just name drop the Queen and Prince Philip and be like,
How would you end up having your dinner with the Queen or a cup of tea?
So I'd not long come back from Afghanistan with the army. I was a reservist soldier. And one of the units that we went with were in Birkenhead. And Birkenhead had just opened this, I don't know if it was some sort of hall or something anyway, and the Queen was coming. So the mayor had to invite so many people, and she decided the people from that area that had been to Afghanistan, they could come along and, other people. So yeah, we managed to have a dinner with the Queen. And it was a lady that had won MasterChef that year that did all the food. So we're all dressed in number 2s and medals on and having dinner. And I was sat next to the Queen's bodyguard. And I was like, do you think I could get to the Queen faster than you can get to me? He's like, well, depends if you can outrun a 9mm, doesn't it? I was like, okay, fair enough. Anyway, so we went out that night, got a little bit drunk, and like I said, I didn't turn into work, which was the Friday. Went in on Monday, and got sacked. Yeah,
Got sacked for having a night out with the Queen.
Yeah, and that's the start of that journey, and I've never had a job since. In like 14 years.
So was the Queen out with you? Was she like in?
No,
in
we
sort of
tried,
like-
but she was having none of it.
I can imagine her ripping it up in flares.
No.
But yeah, wow, okay. I don't think we've had that before.
Yeah.
Beats my story coming into the industry. I don't think anyone's going to trump that, to be fair. Maybe have a little challenge on the show. Who's got the best entry to the renewables industry?
Yeah, I mean, that's how I got started. And I originally started with sort of the roofing side and then retrained later on as an electrician, sort of later on in life. And went down that route.
So it's your own business now then? You are?
It is, yeah. So it's always been my own business since, it's 21, 22. And yeah, we mainly started contracting for people and subbing out, doing your odd sort of MCS job on the side. And then I think it was only maybe 7 years ago, I was like, you know what, I'm working for all these people that are making good money, but I'm not doing it myself.
We're going to interrupt today's show to talk about a new product from Proteus, the sponsors of our lovely little home here on the Renewables podcast. And this is a Type B RCBO in single module format. And this is a super exciting development, I think, in the world of switchgear for us as installers. This is 10 kA rated and bi-directional with all the right markings and logos on. I'm going to pass this over to my co-host Sam for him to have a look at. See what you make of that, mate.
Yeah, it's. I actually dug out in the unit where it's just next door to where we sat now, an older Proteus RCBO. This is a Type A, and it's a 6 kA one, and the difference in the size is next to nothing. So this is the older one here, and this is the new one. So it's basically the same size, but this is a Type B, and we know there's a lot more that goes into a Type B RCBO than does a Type AC. So it just shows the progression there that Proteus are on and trying to save us space in these DBs by literally having next to no height difference on the two products. I know,
I mean, the Type B normally would be a couple of modules wide at least, probably more, and they've got it all into one single space is incredible. And I know from speaking with a contractor over on DMs who'd had his MCS assessment recently, was saying that the assessor had said he should have a Type B RCBO feeding into his battery storage system, which is outdoors, which is interesting. So I think we're going to see the growth in application of these things, and it's just nice to see the range of stuff Proteus have got out there for us as installers. And there'll be a link in the description alongside wherever you're watching or listening to this to go off and check that out. Let's jump back to the chat. That's the interesting view I think a lot of us got. I went on that path when I first started, not with renewables, but I first started subcontracting to other electricians when I formed my business back in 2005, whenever it was. Were you the same, Sam? Would you start off subbing or were you straight out on your own?
I got made redundant as the company I was working for was shutting down. And so I basically got like $3,000 redundancy and was like, do I just get another job or do I set up my own company? So I did that, and then it was basically like an electrical company more so than renewables. That was always what I wanted to go back into, but it's just expensive setting up a renewables company, especially when there was not that much demand for it. And so for me, I was installing batteries back in the heady days when Sonnen were massive in the UK, doing a lot of that, and fitting inverters, doing all that sort of stuff. You just kind of, for me, it was about getting just some money in, really. But what I find really interesting about that, Ben, is that a lot of people that are coming into the solar, specifically the solar area at the minute, are doing it the reverse way. They're electricians and then having to learn the roofing side, whereas yours, because the roofing side to a lot of electricians scares the hell out of them, because it's like it is it is kind of like a bit of a different, completely different trade, knowing how to take a ridge off, knowing how to make roof repairs and like different things like that. Like it's a different part of the job, whereas for you, you've kind of done that, and I assume that part maybe feels even more comfortable than the electrical side because you've done that for longer, potentially.
Yeah, it doesn't feel comfortable when you're doing it. I enjoy the electrical side a lot more, but it's the part where I think I know I can do that because that's what I did before life got luxurious and I was, inside of the warmth. I know I can do it. So, it's interesting, but I don't like to do the roof side now if I can. But again, I'm happy to jump on and get involved.
Yeah, I think that was so for me when I was in renewables when I was employed. The roofing side was a bit. Hardly ever did. I'd maybe give them a hand up with the panels and help them maybe get it on before it got dark or whatever. If the inverter side was fairly easy, but for me when I went out self-employed, that was the bit I had to refresh myself with on and learn. And so I was like, I remember the first job that we did, I was like, right, the inverter side, the battery side, that's fine. I've done that. I could do that, fairly easily. I was like, this roofing side, my God, what am I going to do? And one of the first jobs that I did, I actually subcontracted the roofing side out to someone that probably similar to what you did, Ben, right at the start, someone that basically just did the roofing part. And the guy was fine, but I was like, I have no idea if he's doing this right. And so I was like, I'm going to have to learn how this should be done, even if I end up subbing the roofing side out all the time. I need to know if this is getting done right because it's my name on that MCS certificate and stuff. So then I was like, no, I've got big boy pants on. I need to actually learn how to do this myself. But is that similar to you? Or?
Yeah, I mean, when you first pop your first roof covering open and you're like, Jesus, is this really how this should be done? So we went through a similar process where we'd have subcontract labour come in to support us, roofing contractors or people like Magic coming off to help us do our roofing side of it. Getting that experience into my team as well, because anyone watching will know I don't like heights. I really don't like being on roofs anyway. My forte is the nice warm that Ben's just described with the electricals and inverters. But I wanted them to have that experience. They're fit, young, keen kids who want to be doing this, but they ain't ever worked on a roof before, and you can't expect someone to be trained in one area and just pick up another like it's nothing. Roofing's a skilled trade in and of itself. So it's having that blend, and we're still doing that. We still have people like Mike come and help us, roofing contractors as well. If we get a troubling install that looks a little bit out there, your normal concrete tiles, once you've got into the swing of it, they're not that difficult if the roof's in good order.
Yeah.
I think it's just a journey you go on. And I wanted to mention that the subcontracting aspects. I've had a few people reaching out to me saying, we're just subbing, we've started our own businesses, but that's all we're doing. And just to try and re-emphasise that point, that it's a natural journey of growing a business. I think there's so many people who start doing their own private jobs on an evening and a weekend, and then that might lead towards doing some subcontracting as you start your own business alongside that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's normal. That's the process I went on. We don't do that now. We have all of our own work, but there's a journey with all of this stuff, I think. Sometimes when you're looking at people who you think are already doing it, you forget the steps they've taken. I don't know. If that's just my experience. You might be different.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think there is a bit of a stigma for people that have their own companies to think that they shouldn't be doing any subcontract. They should be winning their own jobs. They should be spending £500 a week on Google Ads. They should be doing all this stuff to get their own jobs. When actually, it is exactly like you said. It is a process, but also I think until you actually start doing a lot of your own jobs, you don't realise the stress of running your own jobs, on the paperwork, like the sword of Damocles over you. If something happens, it is you. Whereas there is, everyone is responsible to a certain level for the job that they're working on. But as a subcontractor, it's one of them where you can work, full on, to earn your money, but then ultimately you're not signing that job off as one of your own. So it depends what you want of money and responsibility, because the money, in my experience, always seems to track responsibility. But if you want to earn a good wage and not have as much responsibility, then for me, a subcontracting route is fine, and actually is a good little supplement to running some of your own jobs, which is how I started. And missed to a degree sometimes. But what do you think on that, Ben?
Personally, I prefer the subcontracting.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So if I could get away with it with sort of the terms of how I want to work and how I want to install, I'd probably just do that. We still do bits of it for other companies. And I use that as the training ground. So you might go to repair other people's jobs, and the best way to learn is by being in the thick of it. So you go to a job that doesn't work, maybe on a system you don't install all the time. You've got to fix it, speak to the manufacturer and all that sort of stuff, but you're getting paid to do it. So you've not got the stress of, oh, my customer's angry, but you fix it and your skills are improving. So I kind of like that. We did quite a bit of subcontracting last year, and we've done some huge sort of 200 kilowatt systems. We've done a nice dome-shaped roof in Cardiff. We've done some great jobs. but jobs that we wouldn't be able to do or win on our own. So I think subcontracting is a great place to get that experience up.
Yeah, I
even
think
now.
that's like the supply chain side of things, isn't it? You very rarely get one company delivering that entire project when you're at that level. It's usually accumulations of smaller ones, and you're dead right. That is a great way to look at it, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. I think you're spot on as well with kind of your view around the stress side of that and not wanting to have that daily grind of doing it. You illustrated that perfectly just then, Sam. It does take a lot of that away, and I think there's a place for both of those things. You know, I'm just thinking now, if we do any subcontracting, we do it with renewables, but we do in other parts of the business. So it's still something that we do even today. So I don't think it ever really goes away, and why should it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all. I'm a firm believer that everyone comes to work to do a good job, and there's usually something. If the job isn't done well in the end, it's not usually down to that contractor just generally not being bothered about a good standard of work. It's usually the money, the time, or the materials, or something that they've got on site that's caused that to happen. And there can be a little bit of that in subcontracting if you do have contractors that don't care about it. I'm really lucky that all the ones that I've used or use now really do care about doing a good job. But there's nothing wrong with getting people in that do something day in, day out, that are going to do it better than you, because ultimately it's your name on that ticket. Would you much prefer to have the job done better than what even you could do, because you're not doing it day in, day out? It's like if you had a plumbing and heating job, don't be scared of subbing out. Like, you wouldn't think twice about subbing out the plumbing and heating side. So why not think twice? Why not think about subbing the roofing side out if you really are, like I was right at the start, really nervous about doing it. But instead of maybe just leaving them to do it, jump up there and have a look at them, look at the job with them, so you can pick up a bit of knowing if it's been done right. I think that is a really important thing for you to know, is that it looks like it's been done correctly, rather than, because if a panel comes off a roof, you are in testy waters there.
That's you wanting to deliver a good job for your client, and I guess you'd be supplying all of the materials an installer would need as part of that, with nice equipment to work with. I remember when I was subcontracting, and the big frustration I used to have was the rubbish people would ask you to fit, the time frames they'd ask you to do it in. That was what would put me off wanting to do that and work for those people. And I think there's definitely elements of that in the renewables space that's out there. I don't know if either of you have observed that. You're not doing that with your subbies, but it's out there, isn't it, I think?
Yeah, it is, definitely. It is. I mean, so do you, how many different companies do you work for?
Not a lot.
You've got really good relationships with a core few?
So on the renewable side, just a handful. Obviously, electrically, we still work for some of the bigger companies and still sub out to them. But renewably, it's only sort of there's trusted people. We're not going out there saying we'll work for anybody that fits solar panels, or will be your QS or anything like that. What we're saying is, if we get on with you and you have the same sort of standards and principles, then we'll either help or we'll jump in and we'll do that part, or vice versa, really.
Yeah.
But I think you've got to have, like you were saying before, you've got to be able to do the right job at your standards and not be rushed by time or equipment or anything that doesn't fall within what you want to deliver.
Yeah, no,
And
absolutely.
that's important.
So you can still have your standards while you're subcontracting, can't you? That's the thing. Sometimes people think, I'm just doing what they're telling me. You can still hold that bar. The work's out there for you to be able to do that. And it shouldn't be that we're all rushed around omitting hooks in places because they aren't supplied enough, just because that's what they're saying should be done. You don't have to do that. But there's a time and place for everything. Outside of that, though, how are you actually finding business more widely at the minute? Are you seeing a uptick in inquiries? Is it slow?
It's the standard solar coaster, isn't it? It's got its ups and downs.
Going to end this solar coaster one day.
It features every single episode, doesn't it? But it is.
That's the way it is. It's feast or famine, And there's no. Like, I'll speak to Dan at DMH quite often, and we'll both just have a little whinge to each other. There's no rhyme or rhythm as to what's happening. So sometimes you'll give an absolute fantastic price and not get it, and sometimes you'll think, I don't want that job.
You always get them.
But that tax on it, you get it, and you're like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So there's no sort of consistency of why you win some jobs or why you don't. But I think collectively overall in the month, the quarter, we do all right. We're doing there. It'd always be nice to have more, though, wouldn't it?
It depends. And I think this drills into an exact point: is I think, and the business thing that we've been doing with Malcolm and all of that, like that is an eye opener that I think you can sometimes be almost like drugged by social media to think that you're only successful if you are, if you're turning over 5 million plus, if you're, if you're just choosing which Lamborghini that you want and all of this sort of stuff. Where we're actually like the business thing that we were doing with Malcolm. What do you want out of that business? Do you want a lifestyle in terms of working 3 days a week? Do you want a Lamborghini? Because nothing wrong with aiming for that if that's what you want, but it's working out what you want. And that goes back to the flexibility side with potentially like subcontracting, where you're going, look, I don't want a customer ringing me up and saying that their inverter stopped. I don't want that. I want to be, in your case, skydiving or other stuff like that. Doing all this other stuff that makes your life feel like it's whole. It isn't all about, being busy on a weekend smashing solar panels in or first fixing a house or doing whatever, if that's not what you want. But if you do want it, then go for it. I think there is a bit of a misconception that it's all about the money side.
Yeah, and you don't need a big turnover to make a lot of money either.
No, exactly.
There are some people who do very well for themselves just working solo. It can be done. There's obviously a limit to what any one person can generate, but you'll see a lot of these business owners and you think they're super successful where they might have 20 people working for them. But, a lot of that, they're struggling to meet payroll when that falls due. They've got all the stress and all of the rest of it there. And, sometimes what you think is reality isn't. That's the brutal side of business that falls on all of our shoulders, whatever level you're at. And what we're doing with Malcolm, and we're referencing Malcolm, it's the owner of Super Rod and Klein Tools distributor in the UK. This is someone who's been very successful in business and, has done very well for themselves. And I think listening to those kind of guided insights is invaluable. And hopefully we can do a bit to support what he's up to as well, which we'll speak about in other content coming up. But yeah, it's interesting and challenging because I'm not a trained business person. Pick that up through doing what I do. I don't know if you've had any prior training of business.
No, I think that's the issue with tradespeople in general. They're good at the trade, but you're never taught how to run a business. And then when you try and transition over, either your trade gets affected or your business side. And it's finding that balance, I think, in the middle where you can still deliver and be a good tradesperson, but be a good business person as well. It's a weird industry.
Yeah, a massive kind of learning thing I went through a year or two ago now when we changed accountants because our last ones weren't the best, was really about like gross and net profit, because it was just like these words that were like a different language about what am I actually making. I'm not, absolutely working like a dog to earn next to no money. And what I found when I was, with these old accounts was you get to the year end and you'd be absolutely shattered, but you're excited to see how much money you'd earn. I wasn't earning out, earning nothing. And that was mainly because my pricing wasn't there, and I didn't have a firm grasp on how much am I actually getting out of this. Not what am I pricing in a job and the materials plus labour equals X, and then I add $1,000 on, I'm earning $1,000. No, what are all the business costs? What are all these hidden things that you need to factor in so that if you want £1,000 out of that at whatever margin that is what you're getting out of it after all of these costs. Because otherwise it's amazing. Like even like the rent on this, that all comes out of what we charge for a job. And I think you're absolutely dead right. You get taught how to clip a cable, how to terminate a cable, how to size a cable, how to fit that distribution, but how to test it, but not how to actually price to win that job. And I know you do a lot in the apprenticeship side, Mark, and I think we've even touched on this before, but hopefully people can be, I don't know how employers would feel, but hopefully part of that can come into some sort of apprenticeship, but I don't know if they've got the time or not to do it.
The one about adding knowledge, it's in discussion at the minute, adding knowledge units into it around it, but you can't allocate the time of another profession into training as an electrician. And as much as we like to dabble in all areas, as electricians, we love stealing other people's work. Accountancy and business management is in of itself a profession of itself. We kind of have to do it in the way it seems to work in the trade sector, that you do kind of go from being somebody doing the job to running a business doing the job, which are two entirely different things. And I'm lucky in my business that my wife is a qualified accountant, and I hate it when she does it, but she will like put a spotlight on particular jobs we've done. and she will analyse exactly what we have, or in some cases haven't made on those projects. Usually after I've wound her up about when the heating too high or something. So that's when I know I'm going to get it. But it's good to have that, because you need that check, I think. You can't spin all those plates yourself as one person as your business grows. So you're not all going to be lucky enough to have someone who is in your family who are qualified accountants or business managers, but that support's out there. You know, you can reach out for that externally, as you have, Sam, running through one accountancy firm to a much better one. But you know, that support is there, and sometimes small companies don't take those steps. They will try and do it all themselves, and that's when the really bad mistakes can come up. So do you have that in your business, Ben?
Sort of, and I don't know if you're the same, but obviously to get the job, the primary focus is making money. That's why you're in business. So costs and profits, that's your primary focus. But as soon as we've secured that job, that's almost like the secondary focus. The primary focus is delivering that job, making sure it's on time, making sure it's going to work. And you can be caught out when you start going, okay, well, I know we measured from there to there, but if we go from there to there, it's only another 100 quid's worth of cable. Or if we do that, should we add this in? What about if we swap that? Okay, it's took an extra day. And before long, your profit margin's just gone down, but you don't realise that when you're delivering the job. It's only afterwards you reflect and go, I've not made as much as I thought I'd make. Why is that? Because my kit cost this and I've put that on, I should be making that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I tell everyone that works for me, you have as much time to do this job as you need to do it right. And there's times where that, that does destroy what you make in the job. Because, especially in solar, you are battling the elements as well. And you might have a full day with 2 or 3 people on the site with a big roof, just a complete washout. And you're like, nobody comes and says, oh, it's a wet day, mate, here's an extra £500. That comes out of your margin. And not every job can go swimmingly. So I think there will be those jobs. But equally, I've had those jobs where it's been like, blooming heck, we've shaved 2 days off this because, it wasn't as bad getting the panels on the roof as what we thought. Or, even sometimes we've made a mistake on the pricing where we've added too much time in. I wish that happened more. But, it's not always like a straight line. It is this jagged line of where jobs go better than others, unexpected costs pop up, materials break, drop panels out of a van before, and smashed a panel. I can't claim on the delivery because it was in our van. And you just have to replace it. And that's, back, I think the last one we did was when panels were about 120 quid a panel. And you're like, great.
Painful.
Yeah.
Great. So, yeah, the ups and downs of actually running an electrical business and a renewables business or any business are just, it's a headache, isn't it?
You know what, the renewables side of it definitely comes with some added extras, I would say. Having done a normal electrical contracting for quite a long while, you can be reasonably confident in your predictions and the ability to deliver the work you're doing. With solar, I've seen it, you are relying on the scaffolders doing what they should do in the weather conditions that are favourable to them at the time they're doing it. If it's icy or it's raining or whatever, or they want to go to the pub and we're making excuses, those things can happen. And then when you go, we've had that last week, a couple of weeks ago, where it was really icy up there on roofs, and that could hold, we don't know, it might hold for a month. It's like, where do you kind of factor that into your business plan? So there is some real risk factors there, I think, for what we're doing. And sometimes customers can forget that when they're seeing contractors' pricing systems who want to be around for the long term. We want to be here to service customers for forever. That's the objective, isn't it? And if you don't set that risk into your ongoing projects, you'll be out of business at some point because your margins are too tight and you haven't got that fat in what you're delivering to sustain yourself when the worst things do happen. And we see it. That's why a lot of these big national companies come and go on the solar coaster. They're not allowing for that. And then consumers are in those sticky wicket areas where they've had systems installed that have gone wrong, inverters gone wrong. Who's going to look after it? The roof's leaking. These companies have long since disappeared. So that's my message to any consumers out there shopping around and you think people are expensive. Just have an honest reflection on yourself as to why that might be. I'll get off my soapbox now.
But we've seen it where we've priced a similar system and you know what people are buying the kit for. We're all buying it for similar prices. So by the time you've done the maths on it, you know that other companies relying on the VAT return to make their money because the margin's not there. It's only there once they get the VAT back. And I think that's risky because you're not going to be in a cash positive position to sustain a business long term.
The VAT thing drives me absolutely crazy, again, coming from normal contracting into that, where you kind of 90 days on it, and you do get into the cycle. Once you're in there, you're kind of in it.
Yeah.
But you're dead right. You need some sort of margin to sustain yourself. I think that's something government needs to get sorted out. To be fair, it is ultimately a grant and benefit to consumers, and us as small business owners are funding that. We're essentially becoming part of the welfare system in doing it. That's the reality of it, and it shouldn't be like that. I can't think of any other situation where small companies doing that. I know sometimes with vehicles they've had it, but you're talking about BMW, for God's sake, or VW. They can afford those kind of things, It's a big hit for us to stand for 90 days and more sometimes.
Yeah, it is. And to explain to anyone listening that maybe isn't in business or is a consumer that doesn't really understand that, is that solar and battery is zero VAT rated, so you don't pay as a customer, as a domestic customer, any VAT on your solar or battery install. But us as installers, we pay 20% on the materials that we buy at the point of from wholesalers and from electrical wholesalers and everywhere. So we basically are overpaying by 20% all of the equipment that we buy. And then once we do your job and we invoice you at 0%, we then have to wait a full quarter usually before getting that 20% back. So that's what you were saying, Mark, about we're paying for you to have an install an extra 20% on, or paying the VAT for that, not to get it back until the next quarter, effectively. And like what you were saying, Ben, that can, if your margins are very tight, if you've made mistakes on your VAT return or anything like that, that can be enough to sink some companies.
Yeah.
I think our last one, I'm happy to share it. Our last one was a relatively small one. It was like 17 grand that we got back. We've had them before at like 30 grand. And you get towards when that's gonna come due, and I'm terrible for forgetting about it. It's a nice surprise when I get reminded by the accountant, but I'm looking at the bank and I'm like, we've done some good jobs for these past few months and we've earned nothing. Like, the bank is, there's hardly out in the bank. And obviously you keep in stock. If we've got this place here, so you're buying stock which is coming out of your bank. You're paying the guys. You maybe have a van that's gone that needs to go in the garage. All this stuff you're paying out. You look and you go, this isn't worth me doing this. It's not worth me being in business. And then you get this VAT rebate back of 30 grand. And you're like, right, that's where all of that money was. But I've had to wait a full quarter for it to come. And you're just like, this is tricky to navigate, and you can get caught out with that.
Yeah, 100% you can. And again, it's not us having foresight of those financial things, isn't it? That's a lever in your business that, any normal business owner won't be foreseeing, because it's not normal for things to go down that way. But yeah, you're right, Ben, that if people aren't factoring that in as part of their trading, that can be one of the crux points that sends companies out of business. And it looks a lot like, again, I've only been doing this a couple of years in the renewables industry, that there seems to be a high turnover in businesses, failing and then restarting, failing and then restarting. And there's all these things that are contributing towards it. And a lot of it seems to be started by government and some of the policies they put in place. I don't know if you two saw I think it was an email from Seagen, that I know you've seen it because I sent it to you actually, about some new initiatives that's coming. And my worry is that that's great. The VAT rebate's great. It's fantastic. It's turbocharging the sector, but we can't afford to front load that as small businesses. They can't keep expecting that of us. It needs to be money coming into the system, and we'd have to get the heat pump experts to tell us if that's how the 7.5 grand works for them. Are they covering that, or does it just come out of a central pot?
Yeah,
it's
I'm
a
not sure the
difficult
grant
one.
works if it's like the OZEV thing, and you get it you get some sort of voucher, or I'm not too sure. Have you had any experience of the heat pump side? I know you do a bit of aircon stuff.
Yeah,
don't you?
we've just signed up to do heat pumps, and I think it does go into your bank. So, but you've got to foot it up front. So you've got to do the installation, sign it off, commission it, all that sort of stuff. You apply for it up front, but then you've got to wait for it anyway. So again, you're still cash flowing this product, and 7.5 grand per job's quite a lot. If you're doing a few a month, it all adds up, doesn't it?
I dare say worse than, because is zero VAT rate? I can't remember on heat pumps.
Yeah,
so you've only got the double whammy. So you've got 7.5 grand, and you've got 0% VAT to stump.
Plumbers have bought all these Lambos they're driving around.
I know.
But that's the issue with the renewable stuff. It's high ticket items, but the margin's still only the margin. But we've still got to foot out sort of like 10, 15 grand sometimes on products. When you start going on to the bigger scale systems, you're laying out a lot of money just to get that same margin back. And that's what I think consumers don't see is the kit and the infrastructure, the scaffolding, everything else costs a lot. It's not all profit.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we're and I know I've spoken to you about this privately, Matt, we're looking to push more, not leave the domestic side because it's my bread and butter, but push more into the commercial side, just to basically hedge a little bit about, for me, it'd only take the 0% VAT thing to either be scrapped or increased that might push some of those customers out of the market. So for me, I'm trying to hedge that a little bit to a sector that doesn't care about the VAT because they get to claim it back because they're a business anyway. But also get on some bigger jobs that are maybe standing a good team of lads for a couple of weeks rather than a few days on a job. And the money, I remember our first 100 kilowatt, and I was like, when they confirmed, and I was like, right, do I press this button to order these panels? Because essentially there's no going back on this. In reality, the wholesaler that we ordered them through were fantastic, and they basically held them for us so that they didn't just all disappear. And then basically when we were on site, after we'd had a deposit, they then shipped it out. But you're still talking big numbers, and you look watching them getting offloaded from a lorry, and you're like, please don't drop these. I can't, even though it'd be your fault, I don't want that aggro. But to fulfill my role here, to try and put a bit of a positive spin on this, is that I remember when I first entered this, and the cost, the entry level cost of systems was unbelievable. Like we were going through a period where pretty much every system we were fitting was 30 grand plus. We've always done quite premium kit, but even then, there can't have been many systems that were under 15 grand like we're getting now. It was all 15 to 25 grand.
I remember when we were doing sort of, obviously no batteries because batteries weren't out there, just standard string systems. They were sort of £20,000 for a string system with no batteries, no anything, just a radial circuit, no import-export monitoring. It's shocking now, considering how much, say, a solar-only system would be. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, the reason why I'm saying that this is positive is that it's unlocked more business for us. It's unlocked a lower. We've just been moaning about the cost of us keeping that kit. Imagine doing those the feed-in tariff period where people were keeping the same levels of stock as what we're doing now, but the price point being far higher, the risk is far higher as well. So in a way, that's potentially made the renewables market a bit more accessible to more people that maybe don't have as much fat in the company as what some of the big boys have. So that's a real positive because it has opened the market up massively.
Yeah, that's the exciting part of it, isn't it? We want more people to have this stuff in their homes and at their business premises. We're all about trying to decarbonise the economy and everything. We have these objectives more widely around net zero, however the politicians shift that about from month to month and year to year. But having people enable them to be able to buy this stuff, it's not so we can drive those Lambos and become rich. I don't know about you guys, but there's a genuine interest in the people who work for me of wanting to provide those things to more people. And the price point falling in terms of the equipment due to, I guess it's scaling up the manufacturing capability of all this stuff. When you were doing it back then, there was maybe a smaller market for it, not as many manufacturers producing panels and inverters, and the technology's evolved, the production processes get faster and more lower cost. And we might see more of that. Who knows what batteries could come down to in price as we get more electric vehicles, and I imagine that would drive development in technology beyond household batteries. We might see those system prices half again. Who knows? And then we can be putting these things in even more people's homes.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's without unlocking further parts of this industry, like the vehicle to grid side of things or vehicle to home. And we touched on that on I think it was the episode that's come out today as we were filming today about unlocking more work for us, potentially fitting different types of chargers, maybe the second generation of chargers where people are now wanting to do bi-directional charging, discharging into the vehicle. Might be an old customer of ours. A lot of us, companies like ourselves that have been around a little while now, there's going to be potential there for us to recontact a lot of these customers that we've fitted an EV charger, a battery and a solar for, to go, this make of charger now has a bi-directional version. chances are your car's now able to be bi-directional if they get all that sorted out. So we're building up that customer base now that we can contact in the future for more work. So we're building that up. This is stage one, as I see it.
That's the exciting side of it again, isn't it? We've got this innovation coming now in vehicles and in the chargers that are going to be available for them. And you're right, Sam, we should be focusing more positively at all of this. So kudos to you for pointing us in that direction. But I think we're right on that precipice now of heading to those times. I think we're seeing it in some of the manufacturers of EV charging equipment. They're developing this stuff. We're seeing the government seriously start to push the DNOs and the energy providers out there to look at this. And the kind of last step is legislation from some of the car manufacturers. And Nissan had some stuff out week before last saying that their cars are going to actually support this and they will allow it to be done. So that will really change the game, I think, again, where we'll get maybe more regional and local pricing that you raised in that last podcast. Because that's the underpinning thing with all of this is access to cheaper energy for more people. And that doesn't necessarily mean the installation of renewables. There's other ways to get there, and the electric vehicle and charging side is a great shout.
Yeah, absolutely. What sort of work sort of mainly makes up your day to day then, Ben? Is it mainly solar? Is it EV? Is it?
Yeah, so it's mainly solar. I was saying to Mark before, we do a lot of electrical reactive maintenance for high street stores and gyms as well, electrically, which we don't sort of publicise. So that makes up a good chunk, but mainly solar. And we've sort of split our diary into blocks. So because we've not got access to like huge teams, we're still a small company, we do 4 days a week. We just have 2 blocks a week. And that's how we work our projects. If it's a bigger one, it takes 4 days. So we tend to just move project to project, and that's what keeps us going, really.
Yeah. And what sort of lead time do you like to try and, because I think we all have, loads of different companies have different visions of how much, how far in advance they want to be booked up. Some people like to be reactive and so don't want to be booked up for 2 months. It actually worries them if they're booked up 2 to 3 months because they're maybe not able to service some of those reactive customers. For me, we don't do any reactive stuff unless it's like a customer of ours that I've got to get out of bed at Saturday morning to go and do. But most of our stuff is like project based, so it's we like to stack it as far into the future as possible. But yeah, what's your happy place in terms of?
I like to be a month or 2 ahead, but it's a weird industry with the G98 and G99. So you could have a massive order book of G99s, but your diary be empty, and you're just waiting for those G99s to get approved, and then that shifts the balance, to your install.
So for anyone that's not in the renewables area or a customer, G99 is an application to connect like a solar or battery storage system that's over a total capacity of 3.68 kilowatts or 16 amps per phase. And to be honest, I can't remember the last job I did that was G90. Well, to be fair, there's a couple of 3-phase 10 kilowatts that have been G98, but certainly domestically, I cannot remember the last one we did that was G98. So you've got that 45, sometimes 45 working day turnaround on that. Sometimes you get much quicker, but a lot of ours tend to be 20 to 40 working days to come back. And that's the thing. I think we spoke about it before, Mark, as well. You kind of, whatever you implement, like if you implement a new pricing structure or an advertising campaign or whatever, because you're short of work, you need to be looking if you're short of work in 3 months' time or 2 months' time to implement something now, because even if you get that customer through, it maybe takes a couple of weeks to get them over the line. You then got to do the G99, which takes another couple of, like a month or month and a half. And then you can actually start looking at booking scaffolding and everything. So you need that gap over there. You can't have it right in front of you. And that's really worrying when you have a job pull out or move.
Yeah, I mean, in the domestic market, it's quite a hard balance, isn't it? Because a lot of them won't wait that long either. So if you're saying to a domestic customer, "Oh, we can book you in 5-6 months," they'll keep looking around. It's very rare that they'll want to wait just for you. It's not impossible. I'm sure some customers will just want to work with you, Sam from Oval. It can happen, can't it? And certainly for some of those YouTube influencer type installers who are out there, they will have people want to wait for them. Usually it ain't going to happen. So if you get too far ahead of yourself with your diary, what your marketing budget might essentially be wasted because you're reaching consumers you can't satisfy. So it's a really, really hard balance. I think if you can get a contract in terms of a framework one, which might be for like 3 or 5 years, you know with confidence that's what that is. So in the railways sector, for example, or highways or the NHS or something, those things exist where you can go into a framework, that's your work for 3 years, it ain't changing. But dealing with normal consumers, it's really hard balance. And we're kind of in the 8 to 12 week slot, I think, in that side of things. We're lucky enough in other parts of the business to have a framework agreement like that where we know what our work will look like 18 months from now. So it does vary depending on what you're doing.
Yeah.
So what do you do about your G99s? Because I know we'll pencil somebody in, say, 4 weeks ahead, and that's where we get the shift of gaps. And, you know, if somebody came along and wanted a 3.68 kilowatt, we could get that in a lot faster because these are penciled. Are you similar or?
Yeah, I think for us, we tend to, it depends how far in advance we're already booked up, because we used to be booked up a lot more than what we are now. The competition is very rife out there, and that's a good thing for consumers, not as good for our order booking, 6 months in advance. But I do welcome it because it brings a lot of like stimulation to the market. But for us, when we have someone that's accepted a price initially, we will then effectively pencil that, depending on the size of the job as well, pencil that slot in where we kind of think it'll probably work out. Some customers ask when that's going to be, some don't, but we tend to put that usually like a week block in. For us, a lot of our projects are about a week domestically when you have like solar, battery, bit of EV, all this sort of stuff in. So we tend to pencil a week in our diary. And for us, like I say to a lot of customers, it's a case of I'm putting you this week in, not necessarily because that is the only time we can do it, but that gives us a bit of time to play with. So if a job falls through sooner, we can maybe ask if we can bring yours through if we've got the G99 already, or if there's no planning issues and all this other sort of stuff. But I want to have that week in our diary that is flexible, but we've got that week there so that we know we've got to try and factor you in somewhere rather than it kind of been forgotten about in an unintentional way.
No, I think consumers are aware of that there's actually an expiry on a G99 application. Because that's the thing we're kind of trying to manage when we're talking about, as you said, Ben, picking that window in your diary. If you get that wrong and you end up with a few you need to complete, the last one might be out of date before you get to it. You can see how that would easily happen, And I understand why the DNOs do that. They don't want people sat on capacity that they could allocate somewhere else. But I think that's something that they could do with maybe being a little bit more generous on to give us a better shot at not having that happen.
The other thing that we've come across a lot is seasonal, because as soon as you start getting them sunny days and people are inquiring, they want to know if they can make use of this summer.
Yeah.
And if you get towards spring and you're looking at these 45-day turnarounds, you've already got a 2-month order book, all this sort of stuff, and you're thinking they might want to wait for you, but also, even though they've got 20 years of this system 10 to 20 years of this system working, they want this summer. And if they're inquiring like April, May, June, and you're looking at it and they're on the phone and going, yes, do you think we'll get it in for the best part of this year? And you're looking at your book and you're like, November?
It's still sunny in November this time.
It can be. So that is another pressure as well, because like you mentioned, the solar coaster, the high is definitely over the summer period for us for inquiries, because people are like seeing their neighbour getting solar, they're maybe speaking to their friend or their family member that's got solar that they've paid no money towards their energy for the last few weeks, and then they start inquiring, but they want it now. Obviously, with the world of like Amazon and like one-click purchase, if they want to buy something, even if it's 15 grand, if they've got the money to do it, 15, 20, 30 grand, they want it next week. They don't want it in 3 months' time. And that is a challenge when you're doing what is probably for most properties, the biggest asset that property will ever have, unless they have a massive extension, on the back of their house, then it's one of the biggest assets that they'll have. But they want it tomorrow.
So I'm going to interject the week's episode there. Thanks to Ben for coming in to chat with us. He spent a couple of hours over talking about loads of stuff, and we've got another episode coming where we get into the other half of that. Feedback we've had in the past before is that 2 hours is just too long for a podcast. So we try and break these up into 40-minute to 1 hour length. If that's not the approach you guys and girls following along prefer, do let us know in the comments, because we're open to suggestions and putting them all out just as a wanna. But the data in the way people listen does seem to match up with that. So that's why we're doing this. We will be back next week with Ben to finish this chat. And it's a good one. We get into all kinds of subject areas. And it's just great to sit down with another installer or two and share your experiences, see if what's going on kind of matches up with other people's views and opinions. And hopefully, for you listening along, that's useful in those goals and objectives as well. As always, if you haven't as yet, please do consider subscribing to the channel. Share this out amongst other people. We're trying to push this as far forward as we can. And yeah, otherwise, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next week.